It was all János could do not to snarl, "So what?" aloud. He was not facing the familiar terrors of war. "You are not even unaccustomed to this," the stern inner voice continued. "You have ridden in automobiles before, in Grantville, several times just a few months ago." János's grip on the handrest of his door to the vehicle grew tighter still. He was sitting on what Americans called the passenger side of the automobile. They also sometimes referred to it as riding shotgun, he'd been told, a phrase that didn't seem to make any more sense than many of the uptimers' expressions. True, he had. 4 times, in fact, with 3 different operators. But first, those vehicles had been driven by Americans very familiar with their operation. All 3 of them filled with the sobriety of age to boot. Not a young Austrian emperor whose personal acquaintance with automobiles was this one and no other. The cursed thing had just arrived in Vienna the month before, not long before János himself returned from his inspection of the frontier forts facing the Turks. Second, 2 of the vehicles had been large and stately things, moving not much faster than a horse and stopping frequently, what the uptimers called buses. The third had been a pickup filled with people in the open area in the back, which moved not much faster than the buses. And the fourth had been large and roomy, almost the size of a proper coach if much lower built, whose operator had been an elderly woman. None of them had been a so-called sports car driven by a maniacal downtime monarch. Nor had any of them been driven on a ridiculous oval-shaped course freshly prepared for the purpose at the command of the crazed king in question. Ferdinand called it a racetrack. The term was English and unfamiliar to János, but his command of the language was almost fluent now, and he could easily determine its inner logic, its frightening inner logic. The automobile skidded around another curve in the racetrack. The rear wheels lost their grip on the surface, just as János had known carts to do on slippery cobblestones during a rain or in mud. But the carts had been moving slowly, not at— His eyes locked on the speedometer and froze at the sight. 60 miles an hour. The phrase didn't have a precise meaning to János, but he knew that was far faster than he'd ever seen an American drive such a contraption. And even at slow speeds, such a mishap could easily cause a sturdy downtime cart to break a wheel or axle. The slide continued, the vehicle now clearly out of control. János clenched his teeth, his grip on the armrest as tight as he'd ever gripped a sword hilt or a lance on a battlefield. Under his breath, he began muttering the same prayer that he always muttered when a cavalry charge he was leading neared the enemy, and his own death might be upon him, commending his soul to the Virgin's care. Ave Maria, gratia plena, Dominus tecum. Fortunately, the muttered words were covered up by Ferdinand's squeal of glee. Fortunately also, while Ferdinand might be portly, he was young and had good reflexes. He turned the round steering mechanism abruptly in the direction of the slide, oddly, and within seconds the vehicle had resumed its steady and straightforward course. They were still going at an insane speed, but at least the king now had the automobile back under control, and apparently they'd broken neither a wheel nor an axle. Ferdinand squealed his glee again. "Ha!" He glanced at János, grinning. "I learned that trick from Sanderlin. It's not like a horse-drawn carriage, you know. The worst thing you can do in a skid is apply the brakes. That means restraining the mechanical horses under the hood." His right hand released the control mechanism, and his forefinger pointed to the smooth, dark blue metal expanse in front of the window. "That's the hood, by the way. It's hard to believe, but there are more than 200 mechanical horses in there." To Dugard's relief, the king had slowed the vehicle considerably. Ferdinand glanced at him again, still grinning. "Congratulations, János.